Imagine standing in the middle of your own engagement party, in the dress you dreamed of, surrounded by family and friends, only to see your fiancé's ex walk through the door with a smug smile.
And when you ask why she's there,
he looks you dead in the eyes and says, "I don't owe you loyalty." That was the moment my entire world shattered, and the night I decided I wouldn't just walk away quietly. I was going to make him regret ever underestimating me. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you thought you could trust, hit that like button right now. Subscribe for more stories where justice is served in the sweetest ways. Because today, you're about to hear exactly how I turned heartbreak into the most satisfying revenge of my life. My name's Becky, and if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have told you I was the luckiest woman alive. You know those people who talk about meeting their soulmate like it's some fairy tale?
That was me. I thought I'd finally found the person I was meant to spend forever with. His name was Ethan.
He had this effortless charm about him. The kind of man who could walk into a room and make people laugh within 5 minutes. He wasn't the most handsome man in the world, but he had presence, warm eyes, confident smile, and this way of making you feel like you were the only one that mattered when he looked at you. We met through mutual friends. A casual Friday night out that I hadn't even wanted to attend. I was tired from work, but something pushed me to go. And there he was, holding court at the bar, telling some ridiculous story, and everyone was hanging on his every word.
When our eyes met, he smiled.
Not the polite kind of smile you give a stranger. No, this was the type of smile that makes you feel like he already knows you, like there's a secret between you. He bought me a drink, gin and tonic, my favorite, which he somehow guessed, and we ended up talking for hours.
I remember my cheeks hurting from smiling so much.
He listened, he asked questions, he leaned in close like every word I said was the most fascinating thing he'd ever heard. From that night forward, we were inseparable.
Texts in the morning, calls at night.
Weekend adventures that turned into weeknight dinners, then lazy Sundays where it felt like the world didn't exist outside his apartment. Ethan was the first man who made me believe in love without conditions. I'd been careful with my heart before, burned by boyfriends who treated me as disposable or who saw commitment as a burden. But Ethan?
He was different.
He made promises, he kept them.
He showed up.
He was consistent, thoughtful, affectionate in a way that made me feel safe. Looking back now, I can almost laugh at how hard I fell.
But at the time, it was intoxicating. One memory stands out more than the others.
It was late fall, the kind of crisp evening where the air smells like leaves and wood smoke. We were walking through the park, our hands stuffed in each other's coats to stay warm. He stopped me right under a lamppost, where the golden light spilled onto the pavement, and he said, "You know, Becky, I think I could love you forever." And my heart just flipped. Right there, in that moment, I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Months passed, and the relationship only deepened. I introduced him to my parents. My mom adored him, my dad approved, which wasn't easy to earn. My friends told me I was glowing, that Ethan had brought out a side of me they hadn't seen in years. And then, the proposal. It wasn't extravagant, but it was perfect. He'd taken me back to the restaurant where we had our very first real date. Same table, same wine, same silly banter. And after dessert, he slid a little velvet box across the table.
My breath caught before I even opened it.
Inside was the most delicate ring, nothing flashy, but classic, elegant, exactly my style. He got down on one knee, right there in the middle of the restaurant, and asked me to be his forever. I cried, of course.
Said yes without hesitation.
The whole restaurant clapped, strangers smiling at us like they were witnesses to some fairy tale. And in my heart, I thought, this is it. My happy ending. If only I'd known that this was just the beginning of something very different. At first, everything seemed perfect. Too perfect, maybe. But love has a way of blinding you to little details, doesn't it? The first time I noticed something was off, we were sitting on the couch one lazy Saturday, scrolling through our phones. Ethan laughed suddenly, one of those deep, genuine laughs I used to love. And when I glanced over, I saw the name at the top of his screen.
Sophie.
I didn't recognize the name, so I asked casually, "Who's Sophie?" He shrugged, not even looking up.
"Oh, she's an old friend. Dated her for a while back in college.
No big deal." He said it so effortlessly, like it was nothing. But something about the way his smile lingered as he typed back made my stomach twist.
I told myself it was nothing.
Everyone has a past, right?
I had exes too. It would have been hypocritical to act like his didn't exist. But Sophie's name kept coming up.
A week later, we were at brunch with some friends, and someone mentioned a new restaurant downtown.
Ethan perked up immediately. Oh yeah, Sophie went there last week. She said it was amazing. I froze for a second.
Out of all the people he could quote, it was her? Then it happened again. We were watching a movie, and he chuckled, leaning over to whisper, "You know, Sophie hated this film. Said it was too predictable."
I tried to laugh it off, but inside, I felt this cold pit forming in my chest. It wasn't just the mentions, either. He still followed her on Instagram. Liked her photos.
Even left little comments sometimes, inside jokes I didn't understand.
One evening, I finally gathered the courage to bring it up.
We were washing dishes together, hands brushing in the soapy water, and I said softly, "Ethan, it makes me a little uncomfortable how much you still talk about Sophie." For a moment, I thought he'd take my hand, reassure me, tell me I had nothing to worry about. Instead, he sighed, rolled his eyes, and said, "Becky, come on.
Don't be that girl. I'm with you, aren't I?"
Why would I block someone just because you're insecure?
The word insecure landed like a slap.
I wanted to argue, to explain that it wasn't insecurity, it was respect I was asking for. But the way he said it, the dismissiveness in his tone, it made me question myself.
Was I being unreasonable? Was I turning into the jealous girlfriend I swore I'd never be?
That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, while Ethan snored softly beside me. I kept replaying his words in my head.
Don't be that girl. My heart ached with confusion.
Because during the day, he was still the man who made me laugh, who kissed me on the forehead, who made me coffee just the way I liked it.
But when Sophie's name came up, it was like I disappeared.
I brushed it aside, buried the unease, and told myself every couple has little bumps. Love means compromise, right?
But deep down, something had shifted. A seed of doubt had been planted.
And though I tried to ignore it, I could feel it growing, stretching roots into the foundation of everything I thought we had. And as I'd soon learn, that seed was going to crack everything wide open. The night of our engagement party, I felt like a queen. I'd spent weeks planning every detail. Fairy lights strung across the garden, soft music floating in the background, tables dressed in white linen with tiny gold accents. My parents had even rented a little hall to fit everyone, family, friends, co-workers. It was the first time in years I'd seen my mom so excited. She kept fussing over the food and telling me how radiant I looked. And for once, I believed it. I wore a soft blue dress that shimmered under the lights. My hair had fallen perfectly into place. Ethan stood beside me, sharp in his navy suit, smiling like the proud fiancé I thought he was. People clinked glasses, congratulated us, hugged us. Every "you two are perfect together" made my heart swell.
I really thought it was the happiest night of my life. Until she walked in.
The door at the back of the hall opened, and in she came, Sophie. Her red dress clung like it was tailored for the occasion, her hair cascading in perfect curls, lips painted a bold shade that screamed confidence.
She didn't look like an uninvited guest. She looked like she belonged there. For a moment, I thought my eyes were playing tricks.
My hands went cold, the champagne flute trembling slightly in my grip.
And then I saw it, Ethan's smile. Wide. Familiar. Almost relieved. People whispered.
A few raised eyebrows, some side glances. I forced my lips into a polite smile, even as my stomach dropped. I leaned closer to Ethan, keeping my voice low. "Ethan, why is Sophie here?"
He barely glanced at me, his tone casual.
"Relax.
She's a friend.
I invited her."
My chest tightened. You invited her?
To our engagement party.
He sighed, annoyed, as if I was the problem. Becky, it's not a big deal. I don't owe you loyalty like that.
Stop overreacting.
The words hit harder than any slap could. I don't owe you loyalty.
I felt the blood rush to my face, my ears ringing as if the music had suddenly doubled in volume. People were watching us, smiling, chatting, but I could feel the tension, the way eyes darted between me, Ethan, and Sophie.
And Sophie?
She glided across the room like she owned it.
Hugged Ethan. Kissed him on the cheek. Whispered something that made him laugh.
My entire body screamed at me to leave, to run, to disappear before anyone saw the cracks forming in my perfect facade. But I didn't move.
I couldn't. My feet felt nailed to the floor.
So I did the only thing I knew how. I plastered on a smile, nodded through congratulations, pretended everything was fine while my insides twisted. At one point, Sophie actually came up to me. She had the audacity to compliment my dress, her tone dripping with that fake sweetness women use when they are really saying the opposite.
Blue suits you, Becky.
You look sweet.
Sweet. Like a child.
Like a consolation prize. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just smiled and thanked her.
My voice cracked.
Later, as I stood in the corner with a half-empty glass, I caught sight of my parents. My mom's smile had dimmed, her brows furrowed as she whispered something to my dad. My best friend Hannah gave me that look, the one that says, "Are you okay?" and I forced a nod even though tears burned at the back of my eyes.
Inside, I was dying.
This was supposed to be our night. My fairy tale. And instead, Ethan had turned it into a stage where his ex could strut around, where he could humiliate me in front of everyone I loved.
And the worst part, he didn't even see what he'd done wrong.
Because when the night ended, when the last guest drifted out and I finally confronted him, he just smirked and said, "If you can't handle me having female friends, maybe you're not cut out for marriage."
That was the moment something inside me snapped. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I wasn't just embarrassed.
I was furious. And fury, I'd soon learn, can be the sharpest tool for revenge. When the last glass was cleared away and the fairy lights went dark, I thought Ethan would finally understand. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd see the pain on my face, the way I'd barely held myself together that night, and apologize.
Tell me he hadn't realized how cruel it was to invite her. That it was a mistake. But Ethan wasn't that man.
As soon as the door closed behind the final guest, I turned to him, my hands trembling.
Why would you do that to me?
Why would you invite Sophie to our engagement party? He leaned against the counter, loosening his tie like he was unwinding after a long day, completely unfazed. You're being dramatic, Becky. She's just a friend. A friend? My voice cracked, sharp with disbelief.
She's your ex. She was all over you tonight.
Everyone saw it. Ethan smirked, that infuriating smirk that made me want to scream. You really need to get a grip. If you can't handle me having female friends, maybe you're not cut out for marriage.
It felt like a knife twisting in my chest.
I stared at him, searching for any sign of remorse, any flicker of love in his eyes.
But all I saw was contempt.
Contempt and arrogance.
That night, I cried myself to sleep.
Not in his arms. He'd rolled over, muttered something about me being overly emotional, and drifted off without a second thought. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, every muscle in my body taut with rage. His words replayed like a cruel echo. I don't owe you loyalty. But the universe has a way of peeling masks off at the exact right time. 2 days later, I was heading into the kitchen when I heard Ethan in the living room, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was low, conspiratorial, with that tone he used when he thought he was being clever. I froze, instincts telling me not to make a sound. Yeah, Sophie came. Of course she did. I invited her.
Silence. Then laughter. His laughter.
Becky? Oh, she's clueless. She's so easy to control, man.
She'll never leave. She knows I could have Sophie back anytime I wanted.
That's the best part. She thinks she's the prize, but really, I'm the one settling.
I felt my knees buckle.
My hand gripped the doorway so hard my nails dug into the wood.
In that moment, something inside me died.
The girl who cried herself to sleep, who begged for scraps of respect, who swallowed her pride to keep the peace, she was gone.
In her place, a new fire was born. Cold. Controlled. Dangerous.
I tiptoed back down the hall, my heart hammering, but not from pain anymore. From resolve.
He thought I'd never leave.
He thought I was weak, dependent, desperate. Oh, Ethan.
He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was.
After overhearing that phone call, something inside me snapped into focus.
No more crying on my pillow.
No more begging for respect from a man who thought loyalty was optional. Ethan had made a game out of humiliating me, parading his ex around like some twisted trophy while treating me like a placeholder. But if he thought I was just going to stay silent, he didn't know me at all. The first step was patience. I couldn't blow up immediately, not without proof. If I confronted him again, he'd gaslight me, twist my words, maybe even make me look crazy to our friends and family.
That was his skill, after all. The smooth talker. The manipulator. So I smiled.
For the next few weeks, I smiled at dinners, laughed at his jokes, kissed his cheek in front of family.
I acted like the dutiful fiancé. Inside, though, I was memoizing everything. Watching. Waiting. And he made it easy.
Ethan had this bad habit of leaving his phone lying around, unlocked. Overconfident, careless, as though he truly believed I would never dare peek. One afternoon, while he showered, I finally did.
And what I found made my blood boil.
Floaty texts with Sophie. Late-night conversations about what could have been. Photos he'd sent, nothing explicit, but intimate enough.
And worst of all? Messages to his friend where he mocked me.
Becky's so gullible. She's just convenient. She cooks, cleans, and worships me. Once the wedding's over, I can always keep Sophie on the side.
My fingers shook as I snapped screenshots of everything.
I sent them to my private email, careful to delete any trace from his phone. My heart raced, my breath shallow, but underneath the fear was something else.
Satisfaction.
Piece by piece, I was building the arsenal that would destroy him.
Of course, I couldn't do it alone.
So I called the one person I trusted most, my best friend, Hannah. When she arrived at my apartment that night, I showed her the screenshots. She read them in silence, her face hardening with every line.
Finally, she looked up, eyes blazing.
Becky, you cannot marry this man.
I know, I whispered. But I can't just walk away quietly.
He humiliated me, Hannah.
In front of everyone I love.
He thinks he's untouchable. Hannah leaned back, a slow smile spreading across her face. So let's make him very, very touchable. That's when the plan began to take shape. We decided the perfect stage wasn't the wedding, it was before. When all the people who adored Ethan, who saw him as this golden boy fiancé, were still celebrating our union.
We would flip his own charm against him. A family dinner.
Just close friends and relatives. A slideshow of our engagement memories, the kind of sentimental thing Ethan loved showing off. Except this time, the slideshow wouldn't end with smiling photos of us.
It would end with the truth. For weeks, I worked in silence. I collected more screenshots. Compiled a neat timeline of his late-night chats with Sophie.
Even printed out Instagram comments that hinted at their ongoing connection. Hannah helped me polish the slideshow, making it look innocent, until it wasn't. The final slide was my masterpiece, a quote of Ethan's own words from that phone call.
Becky's so easy to control.
She'll never leave. Reading it made my chest ache, but imagining his face when everyone else read it? That gave me strength.
And all the while, I kept playing the part. The doting fiancé. The woman in love.
I even let him kiss my cheek in front of my parents, let him hold my hand while bragging to friends about our future.
He had no idea.
Every time he smirked, every time he brushed off my feelings, I hid a secret smile.
Because I knew something he didn't.
His downfall was already in motion. The night of the dinner, I wasn't nervous. Not the way you'd expect a bride to be, anyway. I wasn't worried about the seating, or the food, or whether people would have a good time.
No, the only thing I cared about was timing.
My parents had offered to host the gathering in their home, something small, intimate, with just the people closest to us. It was meant to be a celebration of the upcoming wedding. A night filled with warmth, laughter, and remember whence.
And Ethan? He was glowing.
He strutted through the room like the star of his own movie, shaking hands, hugging relatives, making jokes that made people double over with laughter. He had that smug sparkle in his eye, the one that used to charm me but now just made my skin crawl.
If only he knew. Dinner went smoothly.
Plates of roasted chicken and mashed potatoes, glasses of red wine clinking. My dad gave a short toast about love and commitment, and Ethan beamed like he'd just won an award. I sat quietly, nodding, smiling, keeping my heartbeat steady even though adrenaline was surging through me like a live wire.
Finally, dessert was served.
And as people leaned back, satisfied and comfortable, Ethan stood and clapped his hands. Everyone, if I could have your attention. He announced, grinning. Becky has prepared a little surprise for you all. A slideshow of our engagement journey.
The room erupted in applause.
My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin, murmuring, "Oh, how lovely." I stood, my legs steady as stone, and walked to the projector we'd set up in the living room. My fingers brushed the remote in my pocket, and for a second, I caught Hannah's eye.
She gave the slightest nod. It was time. The slideshow began with sweet, harmless photos. Ethan and I on our first vacation. Me holding up my hand,
showing off the ring. A few candid shots of us laughing together at family events. People chuckled, sighed, cooed. I could feel Ethan's arm slide around my waist as he whispered, "This was such a good idea, babe." Oh, if only he knew.
The next slide flashed. A screenshot. At first, the room didn't register what they were seeing. A text thread. Blue and gray bubbles. Words highlighted. Then silence. The messages scrolled slowly, line by line. Ethan's name clearly at the top. His words to Sophie.
"Wish you were here instead. Sometimes I think you were the one who got away. Becky's fine, but she's not you."
Gasps rippled through the room. Ethan stiffened beside me. His arm dropped from my waist.
"What is this?"
He hissed under his breath. But I didn't answer. I just clicked to the next slide. Another screenshot.
This time, his conversation with his friend. "Becky's so gullible.
She's just convenient.
Once the wedding's done, I'll always have Sophie on the side."
The room fell into complete silence.
I could hear forks clinking softly against plates as people froze mid-bite.
My mother's hand shot up to cover her mouth. My father's jaw tightened. And then, the final slide. Black background.
White letters. Ethan's own words, bold and undeniable. "Becky's so easy to control.
She'll never leave."
The weight of those words filled the room like smoke, choking, inescapable. Ethan shot up from his chair, face flushed red.
"This is ridiculous. Becky, turn it off."
"This is private. This is out of context."
But it was too late. Everyone had seen it. And me? I stood taller than I ever had before.
"Ethan," I said clearly, my voice steady as glass, "you were right about one thing. I am leaving. And I won't be controlled by you ever again." Gasps, murmurs, a chair scraping across the floor. Ethan stammered, reaching for me, his voice cracking with desperation. "Wait, Becky, please, not like this, not in front of everyone." I stepped back, my heart pounding with freedom. "This is exactly the right time," I said. "Because everyone here deserves to know the truth. The wedding is off." The silence broke. My father stood, his voice low and thunderous, "Get out, Ethan." And just like that, the golden boy, the charming fiancé, the manipulator, was exposed. Stripped bare in front of everyone who once adored him.
And me?
I walked away, head high, for the first time in months. Ethan froze, eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal. Every gaze that once admired him now burned with disgust. "Babe, Becky, listen to me," he sputtered, his voice cracking. "Those screenshots, they don't mean anything. They are old. They are jokes. Just guy talk." But his words only made the silence heavier. My father's glare didn't waver. My mother looked away, shame coloring her face.
"And Hannah?"
She smirked knowingly, arms crossed like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. And then, Sophie spoke. From the corner of the room, where she'd been lurking with a glass of wine, she suddenly stood. Her face pale, lips trembling. "Ethan, stop," she whispered. Heads turned. My stomach tightened. "You told me," Sophie said, her voice barely holding together, "that Becky would never find out.
You swore we were just having fun. You said," her voice cracked.
"You said I was the one you really loved." A ripple went through the room like a shockwave. Ethan spun on her.
"Shut up," he hissed. His mask finally slipped.
"You're making it worse." "Worse?" she spat, her voice trembling with fury. "You used me, Ethan. You lied to me too."
The room erupted in whispers. Chairs shifted.
Every guest was watching the perfect facade crumble.
And me? I stayed calm. Too calm.
I looked Ethan dead in the eye and said, "For once, you don't get to control the story. Everyone can see you for who you really are." He lunged toward me, desperate. "Becky, please. I made a mistake. Don't do this. Don't humiliate me like this. We can fix it."
Fix it. The words almost made me laugh.
"Fix it," I repeated, tilting my head. "How do you fix telling your friend that I was just convenient? How do you fix planning to cheat after our wedding day? How do you fix treating me like property you could control?" He stuttered, his voice breaking. I didn't mean it like that. You're twisting."
But no one believed him anymore.
Not after seeing his words in cold, hard text. Sophie set her glass down hard enough to crack it. "You disgust me, Ethan. And then she stormed out, heels clicking like gunshots. The sound of the door slamming was the final nail in his coffin. Ethan collapsed back into his chair, head in his hands, muttering, "This isn't fair. This isn't how it was supposed to go." And for the first time in months, I smiled. Because it was fair. Perfectly fair. I stood tall, my voice clear enough to slice the room in two. The wedding is cancelled. The engagement is over. And Ethan? You don't get to rewrite this ending. I do. The applause wasn't loud. It wasn't the kind you'd hear at a concert or a football game. It was quieter, heavier. Family members murmuring their support, Hannah reaching for my hand, my father nodding with pride. But it was enough. Ethan sat there, shattered, with no way to spin, no way to charm, no way to crawl out of the pit he'd dug. And I walked out of that dinner with my head high, free for the first time in years. When I walked out of that engagement dinner, I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel humiliated. I felt free. Free from the manipulation. Free from the constant second-guessing. Free from a man who thought I was just something to control. And the irony? Ethan thought I'd never survive without him. He thought I was weak, dependent, desperate to be chosen. But when the truth finally came out, it wasn't me who crumbled. It was him. The weeks that followed weren't easy. My family had to pick up the pieces of what was supposed to be a wedding. Vendors had to be cancelled, invitations recalled. And yes, I had to face whispers, judgment, pitying looks. But every time I replayed Ethan's face in that moment, every time I remembered the way Sophie's mask shattered too, I knew I'd made the right choice. Because here's the truth. Love without respect is just manipulation. Loyalty without honesty is just control. And trust, once broken, cannot be patched with excuses. Ethan wanted power. He wanted someone to bend to his will, to orbit around his ego. But I wanted a partner. And I realized I would rather walk alone with dignity than stand beside a liar with a ring on my finger. So to anyone listening who's stuck in a relationship where you feel like you're walking on eggshells, where someone constantly reminds you that you're lucky they chose you, listen to me. You are not lucky to be tolerated. You are worthy of being loved, fully and freely. Ethan lost everything that night. His fiancé, his reputation, his carefully polished image. Me? I gained something far more valuable. I gained myself back. And if you ask me, that was the sweetest revenge of all. If this story hit home for you, if you've ever walked away from someone who thought you were disposable, remember, you are stronger than you think. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more stories of betrayal and revenge, and share this with someone who needs a reminder. Walking away is sometimes the most powerful revenge.